The Overlord believed Earth had been broken. Their fleets hung in the sky like a dark crown, watching the ruined cities below. Smoke rose from Washington, Paris, Beijing, and Cairo. The message of fear spread across every continent. Submit or be erased. But under the ruins, something else was happening. Something the Overlords could not see. In abandoned subway tunnels, in mountain bunkers, in secret bases hidden since the Cold War, humanity gathered. Soldiers who had lost their families. Scientists who refused to give up. Engineers, hackers, doctors, and even ordinary citizens. They came together, not because they thought they could win, but because surrender meant slavery, and slavery was worse than death. In Colorado, deep beneath a mountain, a command center flickered with life. Screens showed the alien fleet in orbit, their movements tracked by what few satellites remained. Generals sat at long tables, their uniforms torn and dirty. Around them, scientists whispered over blueprints and laptops, sketching ideas that seemed impossible. Everyone knew the truth. Earth's armies could not fight the Overlords head-on. Their weapons cut through tanks like paper. Their ships outmatched anything humans had ever built. A direct war was suicide. But humans had survived worse before. Not with strength, not with numbers, but with something else. Cunning. Dr. Elaine Carter, a physicist with sharp eyes and a steady voice, stood before the room. She tapped the table, silencing the generals. "They think we are weak," she said. "They think this war is already over. That arrogance is our weapon. We don't fight them in open battle. We bleed them with 1,000 cuts. Sabotage, ambush, hacks, traps. If we fight like them, we lose. But if we fight like humans, unpredictable, relentless, then maybe, just maybe, we stand a chance." The room was silent. Then, slowly, heads began to nod. It was not a plan for victory. It was a plan for survival. A hidden war. Across the globe, small teams began their missions. In the ruins of London, survivors used collapsed buildings as cover, dragging rocket launchers into shattered rooftops. In the jungles of South America, commandos prepared ambushes, using vines and mud to hide explosives. In the deserts of the Middle East, engineers worked under the sand, building traps that could swallow entire alien patrols. Everywhere, whispers of resistance spread. The Overlords, confident in their power, barely noticed at first. Their fleets bombarded factories, power plants, and airports. They wanted to crush Earth's ability to rebuild, but they did not understand human chaos. A destroyed factory meant nothing when a dozen small workshops sprang up in garages, barns, and caves. A ruined city meant nothing when fighters melted into the rubble and struck from the shadows. But the most dangerous weapon of all was not a gun, or a rocket, or even a bomb. It was information. A group of hackers, working from an underground data center in Eastern Europe, managed to tap into the alien signals. The language was strange, layered with tones and pulses, but the humans adapted quickly. Line by line, code by code, they began to understand. And then they discovered something shocking. The Overlord fleets were not perfect. Their power was enormous, but their systems relied on complex networks that could be hacked. For the first time, humans saw a crack in the enemy's armor. Meanwhile, in the shadows of New York's ruins, a man named Captain Daniel Rourke led a team of survivors. Once a soldier, now more like a ghost, he trained civilians to fight with whatever they had, knives, pipes, even sharpened rebar. He told them the same words every night. "We don't have to kill them all. We just have to make them bleed. Every Overlord that falls shows the galaxy we are not slaves." Small victories followed. A patrol ship ambush in the Andes. A supply craft hijacked over the Pacific. Alien drones hacked and turned against their masters. Each success was tiny compared to the scale of the invasion, but it spread hope like fire. For the first time since the Overlords arrived, humans whispered not just of survival, but of resistance. But hope came with danger. The Overlords were watching. They were patient hunters. And soon, they would strike back with fury. In their great black ships above Earth, the alien commanders studied the growing resistance. To them, humans were still insects. But insect could bite, and enough bites could kill even a giant. The humans believed they were hidden, but the Overlords were already preparing their response. A storm unlike anything Earth had ever seen was coming. The hidden war had begun. The first days of resistance were whispers in the dark. Sabotage here, a hack drone there. But sooner or later, humanity needed more than whispers. They needed to show the galaxy that Earth would not bow. That chance came in the ruins of New York. The city was a graveyard. Skyscrapers stood like broken teeth, their windows shattered, their streets filled with ash. The overlords had left it half destroyed, patrolled only by small groups of alien soldiers and hovering drones. They thought it was safe. They thought no human would dare return. They were wrong. Captain Daniel Rourke and his team crept through the ruins under cover of night. There were 10 of them, dressed in scavenged armor and carrying mismatched weapons. Some had rifles pulled from abandoned armories. Others carried homemade explosives built from car batteries and fuel cans. None of it looked like much compared to the Overlord's sleek weapons. But it was all they had. The target was simple, an Overlord patrol ship stationed in Times Square. It was small compared to the massive warships in orbit, but still powerful. Its glowing engine kept the drone supplied with energy, and its comms tower relayed orders across the region. Destroying it would be like cutting the nerves of the enemy's hand. Rourke crouched behind the wreck of a bus, scanning the alien craft through broken glass. Its hull gleamed with that same black metal, smooth and flawless. 4 alien guards stood nearby, their tall armored forms carrying glowing blades and plasma rifles. Drones hovered above them, their sensors sweeping back and forth like searching eyes. "Remember," Rourke whispered. "Hit fast, hit hard, then vanish. We're not here to win a war tonight. We're here to remind them who we are." The team nodded. Hearts pounded. Fear filled their lungs like smoke. But fear was something humans knew how to use. Fear sharpened the mind. Fear made them fight harder. On Rourke's signal, the ambush began. A flare shot into the sky, lighting the ruins red. At that instant, 2 fighters rose from the rubble, launching homemade rockets. The first slammed into the patrol ship's landing gear, exploding in a flash of fire. The second hit one of the drones, tearing it apart. The Overlord guards reacted instantly, raising their weapons and firing beams of light that melted stone and steel. One of the human fighters was hit, vanishing in a scream of fire. But the others pressed forward, hurling grenades, firing rifles, and using the rubble for cover. Rourke himself charged with a stolen plasma rifle, firing bursts into the ship's hull. The weapon was heavy, its power almost ripping through his arms. But it worked. Blue sparks danced across the alien metal. The ship groaned. The battle lasted only minutes, but it felt like hours. Humans ducked between ruins, using the city itself as their shield. They were unpredictable, moving in ways the Overlords did not expect. One fighter drew the aliens' fire by running across open ground, only to dive into a hidden tunnel as a beam sliced above his head. Another used a hacked drone to mimic Overlord signals, confusing the enemy's sensors long enough for the team to plant charges beneath the ship. And then, with a sound that shook the night, the explosives detonated. The patrol ship's hull split open. Its engines roared, fire spilling out like blood. In seconds, the mighty alien craft collapsed, exploding into a tower of flame that lit the ruins brighter than the sun. The Overlord guards screamed in their strange metallic voices, some burning with the wreckage, others fleeing into the shadows. The surviving drones sparked and fell, their lights fading into darkness. For the first time, humans had destroyed an Overlord ship in open combat. The fighters stood in silence, watching the flames rise over Times Square. Some were crying, some were laughing, and some simply stared in shock at what they had done. Rourke's voice finally broke the silence. "This is the first strike," he said, "but it won't be the last. Tonight, we showed them we're not afraid. Tonight, we showed the galaxy that humanity fights back." News of the ambush spread faster than fire. Radio operators transmitted the story across the hidden channels of resistance. In bunkers, in ruins, in caves across the world, people heard the news. A human team had destroyed an Overlord ship. For the first time since the invasion began, hope was real. But in the black ships above Earth, the Overlord were not celebrating. They had underestimated the humans once. They would not make that mistake again. The destruction of the patrol ship was not just a blow to their pride. It was an insult. And for that insult, the Overlords would unleash their fury. Humanity had struck first. Now the storm was coming. The news of New York's strike spread like wildfire. In bunkers and ruins across the planet, Whispers turned into cheers. Humanity had drawn first blood. For the first time, people dared to believe the overlords could be hurt. But in the black ships above Earth, there was no cheering. The overlord commanders gathered inside the flagship's great chamber, their towering forms glowing with pale blue light. Their voices echoed in harsh metallic tones, layered with static that made human ears ache. To them, the destruction of a single patrol craft meant nothing in terms of power. But it meant everything in terms of pride. These humans had dared to strike back. These insects had dared to wound their masters. And for that, punishment would be absolute. The order went out, make them suffer. The next wave began at dawn. Across the world, cities that had not yet burned became targets. Sydney, Mumbai, Berlin, Sao Paulo, each one felt the wrath of the overlords. Great ships descended, their weapons slicing through the air. Entire neighborhoods vanished in beams of white fire. Skyscrapers melted into rivers of glass. In seconds, millions were gone. The aliens did not fight armies. They fought civilians. They targeted hospitals, schools, shelters, any place that gave hope. They wanted fear, not victory. They wanted humanity broken. In the ruins of Mumbai, survivors ran through smoke-filled streets as drones hunted them from above. A mother clutched her child, diving into a collapsed subway tunnel just as a beam cut the street in half. In Berlin, church bells rang as people gathered to pray, but the bells fell silent when fire consumed the cathedral. In Sydney, the opera house cracked and crumbled, swallowed by the harbor in a storm of ash. The message was clear: no human was safe. No place was sacred. In the Colorado Command Center, generals and scientists watched in horror. The screen showed the destruction in real time, cities erased in minutes, screams filling the comms channels before cutting into static. Some leaders argued surrender was the only way to survive. "We can't stop them," one shouted. "Every attack we make, they answer with 10 times the firepower. If we resist again, there will be nothing left of Earth." But others, their eyes red with grief, shook their heads. Dr. Elaine Carter stood, her voice shaking but firm. "If we kneel now, this is a future forever. Slavery, chains, obedience until the human race forgets it was ever free. They want us afraid. They want us silent. That's why we must fight louder." Her words struck deep. The debate ended. Humanity would not kneel. Meanwhile, in New York's ruins, Captain Rourke and his fighters watched the skies burn. They had expected retaliation, but not this. Not the slaughter of millions. Some of his team broke down in tears. Others wanted to surrender, blaming themselves for provoking the storm. Rourke said nothing for a long time. He simply stared at the horizon, where fire painted the sky red. Then, in a low voice, he spoke. "They were always going to kill us. The only difference is now we've made them bleed. That means they fear us. And if they fear us, then they can be beaten." The fighters looked at him, their despair shifting into something harder: anger. Humanity's grief was becoming fuel. The overlords, however, believed they were succeeding. From orbit, they saw burning cities and thought Earth was broken. They saw billions grieving and believed fear had won. But they did not see the truth beneath the ashes. In hidden tunnels, more civilians joined the resistance. In secret workshops, engineers built deadlier weapons from scraps. Hackers worked day and night, digging deeper into alien code. And everywhere the overlord struck, survivors swore revenge. The aliens thought fire would end the fight. Instead, it spread it. Weeks later, the world was unrecognizable. The great cities of humanity lay in ruins. Smoke rose from every horizon. The death toll reached numbers too high to count. The earth itself seemed broken. But humanity was not gone. In caves, bunkers, ruins, and forests, the human spirit burned hotter than ever. People who had never carried a weapon now held rifles. Farmers, doctors, engineers, students, ordinary people became soldiers. They no longer fought only for survival. They fought for vengeance. The overlords had responded with fury. But instead of crushing humanity, they had forged something far more dangerous. They had created an army of the desperate. And desperate humans, history had shown, were the most dangerous kind. The sky over Earth changed before anyone understood what was happening. At first, people thought it was a storm. A strange shadow spread across the clouds, wider than any hurricane. It was too fast, too unnatural. Birds scattered in panic. Dogs howled as if they sensed something their owners could not. Then the news reports came, every channel, every network. Astronomers had spotted something enormous in space, moving toward Earth. It wasn't a comet. It wasn't an asteroid. It was a fleet. Billions of people sat frozen in front of their screens, watching live images of the dark shape sliding into orbit. There were hundreds of them, each larger than a city. Their surfaces gleamed black like obsidian, swallowing sunlight. No human ship had ever been this big. No design looked like this. The world knew the truth in one terrifying moment. We were not alone. Governments scrambled. Fighter jets lifted into the air. Warships set course toward the coasts. Satellites sent frantic signals. But none of it mattered. The alien fleet simply hung there in silence, watching, waiting. Then the message came. It was not a voice anyone could recognize. It was deep, mechanical, layered with something almost alive. Every radio, every TV, every phone lit up with the same words. This planet now belongs to the overlords. Submit, and you may live. Resist, and you will burn. The words echoed across the globe. In every language, in every ear, the message carried the same cold certainty. These beings were not asking. They were commanding. Panic swept through the cities. In New York, crowds screamed in the streets. In Tokyo, highways jammed with cars trying to flee. In London, soldiers set up barricades as the sky grew darker with shadows of the ships above. Inside the United Nations building, world leaders argued in panic. Some said surrender was the only way to survive. Others demanded war, even if it meant extinction. No one could agree. And above them, the ships waited, patient and silent, like predators watching their prey. Hours passed. Humanity held its breath. Then the overlords moved. The first ship descended over Washington, D.C. It blotted out the sun, covering the White House in complete shadow. Its hull opened, and from the darkness poured smaller craft, sleek, sharp, glowing with pale blue fire. They sliced through the sky and hovered above the city. Missiles launched. Fighter jets attacked. But the overlord craft moved like ghosts. They twisted and vanished, reappearing in impossible angles. In seconds, America's strongest defenses were nothing but smoke. Then the city burned. The alien weapons did not fire bullets or bombs. They unleashed beams of white light that turned metal into ash and stone into liquid fire. Buildings crumbled like sand. Streets split open. The screams of thousands echoed as Washington fell in a single night. The world watched in horror. But the overlords did not stop there. A second fleet descended over Beijing. A third over Paris. A fourth over Cairo. One after another, great cities of Earth became testing grounds for alien power. No army stood a chance. Tanks exploded before they fired a shot. Warships sank in the blink of an eye. The message returned, colder than before. Submit or be erased. For many, hope died in that moment. People whispered that Earth was doomed, that humanity had no chance against such gods of war. The overlords had crushed entire cities as easily as crushing ants. But somewhere deep below the ruins, far from the eyes of the invaders, others whispered something different. They said Earth had always been underestimated, that humans were not gods, but neither were they slaves. In the silence after the first invasion, a spark of defiance began to burn. Soldiers gathered in hidden bunkers. Scientists pulled equipment into underground labs. Ordinary men and women swore oaths to fight, even with their bare hands if they must. The overlords thought Earth was broken, but they did not understand the human spirit. Not yet. The first chapter of the war had begun, and in the shadows of the burning cities, humanity prepared its answer. Earth smoldered beneath alien fire. Cities were gone. Skies were choked with smoke. Entire nations had been silenced. To the overlords, it looked like victory. To humanity, it looked like the end. But in the ruins, something was changing. For weeks, resistance groups had fought blindly, striking at patrols, sabotaging drones, stealing what little technology they could. Every act of defiance seemed small against the fury of the overlords. Yet small acts had begun to add up. Weapons were being tested. Codes were being cracked. And in the shadows of the chaos, a secret discovery was about to change everything. It began in an underground bunker beneath Eastern Europe. A group of hackers worked around the clock, their eyes glowing in the dim light of screens. They had been intercepting alien signals for weeks, sifting through endless streams of data. The language was complex, tones and pulses layered with hidden codes, but humans were stubborn learners. Bit by bit, the strange patterns began to make sense. Then, one night, a breakthrough came. A young hacker named Ilya froze at his station. His fingers stopped mid-typing, his eyes widening. "Wait, this isn't just command data," he whispered. This looks like a distress signal." The room went silent. Scientists and soldiers crowded around as lines of alien code scrolled across the screen. It was fragmented, full of static, but the meaning was clear, a warning, a call for help, sent not to Earth, but from the overlords themselves. The realization struck like lightning. The overlords were not invincible. Their empire had cracks. Somewhere out there, far across the stars, enemies of the overlords still existed. Dr. Elaine Carter examined the data with trembling hands. "Look at the energy patterns," she said. "Their ships, their weapons, all of it depends on a centralized power source. If we can disrupt it, even for a moment, we can bring their fleet down." The room erupted with whispers. For the first time since the invasion, humanity had more than hope. They had a weapon. News of the discovery spread quickly through resistance channels. In bunkers across the globe, fighters gathered to hear the message. The overlords are not gods. They can bleed. They can fall. Captain Rourke heard it in the ruins of New York. His team, hardened by weeks of battle, listened as Carter's voice crackled through a battered radio. "They are not perfect," she said. "Their power depends on networks. If those networks fail, so do they, we know where to strike. All we need is the courage to do it." Rourke looked at his fighters, their faces lit by the faint glow of firelight. "We've been waiting for a sign," he said quietly. "This is it. We don't just fight to hurt them anymore. We fight to win." The team's eyes hardened. They were ready, but the road to victory would not be easy. The Overlord systems were buried under layers of encryption. Every code was like a wall of steel. Every signal was guarded by drones and patrols. To reach the heart of the enemy's power, humanity would need more than bravery. They would need unity. And so, for the first time since the invasion, resistance groups around the world began to work together. Messages were smuggled through hidden radios. Teams shared stolen weapons, hack codes, and intelligence. Small fires of resistance merged into one great flame. The overlords noticed. Their surveillance picked up unusual patterns. Sabotages coordinated across continents, ambushes perfectly timed to strike multiple patrols at once. The aliens had assumed humans were too divided to stand as one. Now, they saw a planet uniting in defiance. Then came the first test. In the deserts of North Africa, a resistance cell hacked into an overlord supply ship. They rerouted its systems, forcing it to land off course. When the overlord soldiers emerged, they walked into a trap. Explosives hidden beneath the sand erupted, swallowing the ship whole. For the first time, an alien craft was captured nearly intact. Engineers swarmed over the wreckage, pulling apart weapons, studying engines, dissecting systems the aliens thought no human could understand. And from that wreckage came the final piece of the puzzle. The ship's core, its energy source, was linked not just to itself, but to a larger network. Destroy the hub, and the entire fleet could be crippled. The discovery spread through the resistance like fire in dry grass. The overlords had made one fatal mistake. They had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt. The galaxy watched silently. Other enslaved species heard rumors through hidden channels, rumors that the humans had done the impossible, that the overlords, for the first time in centuries, were vulnerable. And in the ashes of Earth, humanity prepared. The time for survival was over. The time for defiance was ending. Now came the time for war.